if I'm completely honest, because after my accident, how people reframed me and the person that I was, I found quite tough to deal with. Naturally, I'm surprising myself day in, day out, just because I'm trying to learn something completely new. I feel like whenever you're out of your comfort zone and you're trying to learn something new, you're always going to surprise yourself, and it can be in a good way or a bad way. I think for me, what I've loved about triathlon is just how honest it keeps you, because in motorsport, there's lots of other factors that are outside of your control as an athlete, and that can be tough at times. In triathlon, if you put in the hours when no one's watching, for me, I would rather be ambitious and go for gold, and then I'm quite happy to fail. I think we're all deep down a little bit mental.
Hello and welcome to Frodino Going Mental, where we tell stories of people who have hit rock bottom and made their way back up. And today, our guest, my dear friend Billy Monger, is somebody who personifies exactly that. Having grown up around go-karts, driving the circuits of the world, aspiring to be a Formula One driver, had a horrific crash at the age of 17, lost both his legs, and has managed to pivot and redefine himself as an Ironman world champion, the fastest man ever in Kona, the Ironman world champion at 14 hours and 23 for a double amputee. I mean, an Ironman's hard enough to do on both legs, I can guarantee you, but this guy has done it by himself. And this is where we met as well. It's the first time we locked eyes and had a brief chat where he was around with his family. And I've had the pleasure of meeting him several times over the years. We recently connected in London at his house and had a chat about who he is. And, you know, it really is fascinating where his mindset comes from, where he derives his strength. And we're going to dive right into it over the next hour. So tune in and join me for this conversation with Billy Monger. Frodino Going Mental. This case is Monger Going Mental. Billy, how are you and where do we find you?
You find me in the washroom at my house, because this is a part-time office. So not the most glamorous of locations, but this is where I do bits like this.
Fantastic, fantastic. Is that a fire extinguisher in the background? I'm blind as a bat, but it looks like it's kind of like a signaling color.
No, it's not a fire extinguisher. We haven't got to worry.
Oh, Billy Monger, always close to danger. So let's get straight into it. I mean, from racing driver to presenter to Paralympian, I mean, you're a human pivot. I mean, it is genuinely amazing. When you hear going mental, what does that mean to you? Like, what comes to your mind?
I think we're all deep down a little bit mental. I think, especially if you've got ambitions, if you want to do some crazy stuff, like naturally you have to be wired a little bit differently to have those like lofty ambitions. And I think, yeah, having met you, I'd say that you've got those lofty ambitions in both as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something about ambitions and something about drive and being able to dream up things that are probably a little bit out of the ordinary, right? When was the last time you really surprised yourself?
The last time I really surprised myself. I think you mentioned about pivoting and going into the world of Paralympics. I feel like naturally I'm surprising myself day in, day out, just because I'm trying to learn something completely new. I feel like whenever you're out of your comfort zone and you're trying to learn something new, you're always going to surprise yourself, and it can be in a good way or a bad way, but you're always going to come across those moments where you do something you didn't think you could do, or you realize there's a stumbling block that you have to get around.
Yeah, that is quite something, and it really resonates a lot, right? Like moving just outside of your circle of comfort zone and really moving into, into resilience, which we'll get into later on. But I really would like to first get an understanding. I mean, you've had a lifelong in sports, right? You got your first kart when you were 2. You were only allowed to drive it when you were 6. there's no way that thing stood in the garage for 4 years, not touching it. Anyway,
My dad did not leave the thing alone for 4 years, tweaking it and doing all his bits to it, making up graphics to make it, put my name on it and stuff like that. But I wasn't allowed to drive it, so I just had to kind of look at it and wonder what it would be like for 4 years.
That's fantastic. What were you chasing before you knew what success was? Because as a 6-year-old, right, I'm assuming success was, of course, you want to win, but it's not really tangible, right? You're figuring stuff out.
Yeah, exactly.
What were you chasing before that?
I think for me, it was just the whole reason I started racing and go-karting was, one, because that's what my dad knew. That was his world, and that's something he did for fun with his friends. He wasn't competitive to a level where he was competing at the highest level. So racing in a weird way was never actually something where it was like all about ambition and success. It was about having fun. And that's exactly how it then transpired and started for me. It was like, this is a way for me and my dad to go out, do something a bit different that he has got a lot of passion for, and just like have some son and father time. And so it was just fun time to spend together, where it felt like we were connecting over something, and it ended up becoming something where the ambition and success side of it came in at a later point.
Yeah, I feel like ambition, success, the metrics that go into it, the planning, all that kind of stuff. Do you still find time for fun? Do you think fun is actually part of the recipe, even though it's so difficult to plan and it's so difficult? It's kind of, right, the one thing that, well, it's either there or it's not. But I find it's difficult. It's difficult to plan. Is that part of your recipe of success still?
I think the stuff that I've sort of pivoted into doing now, like triathlon and learning something, like and learning a whole new sport for me, I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was fun. Like, don't get me wrong, there are moments where it's really, really tough and it sucks and you don't want to get up and train and your body's broken down. There's plenty of that. But I think if I was just doing it just to be successful and I wasn't being able to find any joy whilst doing it, I wouldn't have lasted, in the sport, and I wouldn't want to move on to the next thing within the sport. I think I would have lost my focus on it and would have gone somewhere else. And I guess I'm now a person, like you say, who has pivoted a couple of times with sort of what I'm known for and what I'm doing. So I'm not afraid to drop something if it doesn't become enjoyable and doesn't give me a certain level of fulfillment, which luckily right now what I'm doing is giving me just that.
Yeah, tab 2 fun, right? I mean, I have a good friend who he's a multiple Olympic champion in biathlon, and he always used to say, if you're having fun, it's hard to avoid success, which has become like this kind of mantra frame, right? Because especially triathlon, which you've now become a part of, is, well, not dissimilar to race driving. It's all about metrics and data and collecting wearables and all these kinds of things. Did the switch to triathlon for you, did it feel more like a rebirth, or was it something that was more a necessity? Given your circumstances, people have heard your story. So, just a very brief overview for those that haven't heard your story. You've grown up as a racing driver. You had a horrendous crash, lost both your legs that were amputated, and later found purpose in charitable events, pivoted to triathlon, extreme events. But that pivot into triathlon, was that for you a rebirth or a necessity given the circumstances?
I think it was a bit of both, to be honest, because there was the sort of start of my pivot towards triathlon came from those charitable sort of challenges that you've mentioned. And that for me probably felt like quite an essential thing to do because of how I was looked after my accident. I had a huge sort of the real sense of community with people coming around me, supporting me, the motorsport community, and wider than that after my accident. And a lot of Just for Giving page was set up for me to help basically fund being able to buy prosthetics and support my recovery when me and my family didn't really know what that would look like. So I'd always felt supported in that really, really tough moment, that life-changing moment. So the charity side of things and giving back and sort of like passing that baton on, where it was like almost a weight off my shoulders by being able to, know how much the support meant to me, but then to give that to other people, that for me was something that I always, since my accident, I wanted to do something to feel like I sort of took that goodwill and I did something positive with it. I didn't just take it all for me. So that side was definitely something that I thought was always going to be essential, and it's something that I always wanted to do. I guess then to find out that I really enjoyed triathlon and the different challenge that it posed, and then to sort of fall in love with the sport and decide that this is a route I want to go down on a more permanent basis, and to really push my comfort zone and push myself as an athlete in that aspect. That wasn't planned. That wasn't essential. It's just something where I just gravitated towards it, and I liked the fresh new challenge it presented.
Yeah, it does seem to me, honestly, that giving back to others has become as important as perhaps proving something to yourself. Do you ever see that as a privilege as well, to be able to give so much? I mean, I know you're giving a lot, right? A lot of your energy, but the output, I mean, you've raised millions for comic relief. And I think you inspire a generation of young athletes and athletes all around the world to a degree that is just far bigger than most people ever have the opportunity. Is that ever a conscious privilege to you, where you kind of take it in and realize that's kind of pretty cool?
Yeah, and it didn't start that way, if I'm completely honest, because after my accident, how people reframed me and the person I was, I found quite tough to deal with. I had my accident when I was 17. I turned 18 whilst I was still in hospital. And I basically went from being a racing driver who'd raced for 12 years, who'd won British championships and was sort of, on that journey to F1. And that was the goal and the dream. So all of a sudden I was reframed as like an inspiration, which in my head, I'm like, well, I'm just the same kid who wants to be a Formula One driver. And like, I actually haven't changed as a person, but just all of a sudden people were putting that tag on you, which is quite a lot of pressure to sort of have that on your shoulders at such a young age. Like, I'm thinking, why am I an inspiration? I've just had a crash whilst doing this thing that I've always done. And all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, people are calling me that. And I really struggled with that in those probably the first initial 6 months. I'm like, do I have to act in a different way? Like, how do you be an inspiration to people? And in my own head, I think I was overthinking that quite a lot in the early months, because like I say, I hadn't changed, but people's perception of me had. But it took me a few months to sort of come back to the fact that, okay, people can think what they think, and if they think I'm an inspiration, that's up to them, but I need to live my life how I want to live it. And if that creates this positive effect where people get inspiration from me, then that's a bonus. But if I'm pretending to be something I'm not, or trying to do stuff that I think people want to see from me, that's not the right way to go about it.
Yeah, 100%. I think once you try it, once you fake it, there's no way, right? Do you know who Christina Vogel is?
I've heard of the name.
So she's a track cyclist, Olympic champion, extremely successful athlete, and one day in training had a horrendous accident that left her paraplegic as well. Not as well, so that left her paraplegic. And she said, I am still the same, only the way that I moved has changed. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I can relate to it. I mean, I went back to driving race cars with no legs and had to basically redesign how I drove a racing car. But when I was in the racing car, from the outside looking in, you couldn't see that. You just saw another racing driver out there. And that was, for me, such a special feeling to basically, if you're just turn up to a racetrack to watch some racing, I was there competing against able-bodied athletes, the same people that I'd competed against for years. And I was a competitor doing the sport that I loved. So I really, really relate to that statement, to be honest. And it's the same in triathlon. Okay, I've got prosthetics, I move differently to how I moved before, but I'm out there competing. I'm putting in the same time and effort as others. And that for me is just what it's all about. It's just getting out there and doing it rather than sort of talking about it. I just want to do the thing that I'm doing now.
Yeah, I mean, arguably you're putting in more effort because you have to figure out so many more variables that the rest of the world kind of doesn't. You have I mean, we've talked about prosthetics and stuff. But what I really want to know is we're talking a lot about your outside presence, how you are on the racetrack, how you received the inspiration. And, you go out and have these massive achievements. But we all know, especially in endurance events, there's a lot of time between drinks. There's a lot of time between events. What is it that fuels you when nobody's watching? Like, what voice in your head is louder than all the applause?
I think for me, what I've loved about triathlon is just how honest it keeps you, because in motorsport there's lots of other factors that are outside of your control as an athlete, and that can be tough at times. If I don't raise sponsorship, I don't compete, etc. In triathlon, if you put in the hours when no one's watching, then when people are watching, you are able to capitalize on that. You're able to show the hard work you've done behind the scenes. And it's the whole process of just bettering myself every day. I feel like every day I get up, I train, I tick all the boxes that I want to tick in that day. I feel like if 8-year-old me was watching what I'm doing now, he would be very proud that I've become the person I am, that puts in hard work when no one's watching, and that loves what he's doing and the process of it all. And I think that's really important. I always look back to like the younger version of me who would have maybe thought that this sort of thing isn't possible, and it's like just nice to be like, no, you're doing what you want to do, you're happy, you're enjoying the process, and the result is the result. You can't control the result, you can't control what other people do, but you can control what you do in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a winner attitude, right? Like that's so special. I mean, thinking about your 8-year-old self, if you could put a Post-it note on your mirror in the morning, where you brush your teeth, would you write one? Would you tell them to do anything different, or would you give some advice?
It's a good question. That I feel like when I was just starting out in racing, when I was like 8 years old, I'd say the hardest thing that I actually found when I was at school, those sort of years, was like the feeling of me wanting to fit in. And that's something when I was younger that I felt like, because racing is so different and none of my friends did it, I would sort of go away for the weekends, go on these crazy adventures, across the country with my dad and winning events. And then like I talked to my friends about it for a few minutes, and then it would be about the birthday party that I missed at the weekend that they were all talking about. And I found myself when I went back to school kind of not keeping my achievements and what I was doing quiet, but I wouldn't make a big thing of it because no one was at school that could relate to it in a way. So I just had to find other things to relate to my peers. And probably what I would say is, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because you want to get on with your friends, you want to speak to people and find common ground with people. But probably I would say, like, don't be shy about that kind of stuff. Don't always feel like you have to fit in with other people. Like, actually being unique and doing something different is something that you should be proud of and just accept.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it really is one of those things, especially when you choose a different path, right? That's not kind of the trodden path where you're at. Do you like now? Do you have a time for a social kind of? You talk about your friends, and whether, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, do you have time for social interactions, for people, because now your life is more extraordinary than ever, right? Like, I mean, we've talked about your positions, you're actively involved in Formula One, in touch with these kind of guys, you're traveling the world as an athlete, you're trying to fit in all this training. Where do you fit space for your private life, or do you even seek it out?
Yeah, I definitely try and find space and keep touch with people. I definitely would say that since my accident, my circle has grown smaller. So the people that I used to, make a lot of effort to see, now naturally as you get older, you realize that some people that you have been sort of making an effort with to stay in your life, when you go through something like my accident, for example, the people that were really close to me and really there for me, they showed up, and the people that didn't, they drifted away. And I think I've just learned that there's nothing wrong with having a small circle, but the people that are in your circle, the people that you do let in, and people that do make an effort, I want to be the sort of person that makes effort with the people around me that have sort of shown me love and support when I needed it most. So it is important for me to find as much time as possible. It's not easy. Sometimes weeks are busy, traveling away. So, we all talk about balance in life. There's some weeks where that balance it doesn't suit a social calendar, but then the weeks where it does, I try to make the most of that and make the most of the days that I can spend with people, and really be, when I am with those people, be as present as possible, rather than, being there and thinking about the next training session or the next week where I'm traveling to a different country. It's like just about trying to compartmentalize that as much as possible. But when I'm with people, they get my full focus, they get my full attention, and that's all you can do, really.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's one of those things, right? I guess your circle of friends that know you, they also they expect it. They don't need an answer, and immediately they realize, okay, yeah, he'll get back to us when he can, and when he's around, you're not the guy for a Wednesday night dinner club.
No, exactly.
But when you're out of it, I mean, people thrive on routine, which is something I feel like we don't have in life. But is there like a non-negotiable for you, something that you feel like you want to do every day, or you need to do on a more or less daily basis, just to keep your mind in check?
I think now movement has become that, and it's down to, the way I've pivoted into triathlon, like you're training on such a regular basis now that if I go a day where I'm traveling out to a different country or something like that, I struggle if I haven't done some form of movement, and it's something that I'm working on as well, because I think sometimes if you haven't, if you've been traveling out to Singapore, for example, where I went recently, it's 13-14 hour flight. Sometimes like that doesn't work well with wanting to move your body each day and get that own time for yourself. It's about, for me, not getting myself down if I've had to, have a day without it. As much as every day I want to tick that box and want to feel productive and good within myself that I've moved and I've got through what I needed to get through. If things have to move, for example, like I say, if I'm traveling away, like it's just something I'm working on, is trying to be okay with that and not to get worked up about having to shift things around, being like okay with having to be adaptable, basically.
Yeah, tell me, please, when you figure it out, please tell me, because I am terrible. I honestly, I can't get it. It's weird. It's become like an addiction to me, like where I really realize, like, if I don't get that little bit of oxygen at the beginning of the day, it's just, I lose my space for reactions. I just become terrible. I become unproductive. Like interviews, I just start blabbering on. So when you figure it out, please make sure we'll be watching on your YouTube channel or any other channel where you can please give us a masterclass. By the way, give Billy a follow at Billy Monger. Is that Billy Monger or Billy Monger Racing? Your YouTube channel?
Billy Monger on YouTube, yeah.
Billy Monger on YouTube. It's really fascinating to get some insights into your world. I want to change gears a little bit here and talk about pressure, flow, and dealing with the kind of control, because you to me epitomize that. And you've gone from single-seater racing to grinding out marathon on prosthetics. I mean, they're two completely different kinds of suffering, I guess, or demands. In racing, I mean, you had milliseconds to react. Like, it was the finest margins of error. In Ironman, you have 14 plus hours to think and control your thoughts. Which for you, would you say is harder mentally?
For sure, when I moved from racing to triathlon, I struggled to deal with basically. I remember one of my first ever sessions when I basically decided I was going to train for Kona and I was going to start that journey. And it was just to get on the bike for 45 minutes and just spin for 45 minutes. And I remember thinking, wait, if I go faster, it doesn't change anything. If I pedal harder, it doesn't change anything. I've just got to sit here for 45 minutes, regardless of effort levels, etc. And coming from racing, that's just not how I was wired. I was wired to basically want to do everything as fast as possible. And I realized, wow, I don't think I'm a very patient person. I think I'm lacking in a bit of patience, and going into triathlon and that kind of style of training, you need to just be comfortable to just sit there, and the time's not going to speed up no matter how hard or you think in your mind that you want it to speed up. 45 minutes is 45 minutes. And that was definitely the biggest shift from me coming from the motorsport background, was just really focusing in on patience and not looking at the clock every single minute and thinking, why has it not gone faster? Those minutes are still the same.
Have you developed any tricks? Have you developed anything like mentally to get you into that flow state? Because I mean, now you're not riding 45 minutes. Now you're riding hours and hours on end. And I mean, have you developed any tricks that you're willing to share?
I don't know if I've necessarily developed tricks, for example. I feel like you just, with practice, like with anything, you just kind of realize, like I've learned that lesson of I'm not going to speed up the clock by looking at it so much. So now, rather than thinking about how much longer have I got left, it's just about focusing on just trying to stay present in a session. If you're in an interval, focusing on your effort level. If you're easy spinning, if you're on like a steadier interval, it's like, again, sometimes my mind wanders a little bit, but in general, it's like when I'm training, I'm trying to just stay focused in what am I actually trying to do right now, and where is this going to serve me well? How is this going to improve me as an athlete? And it's just sort of trying to link it back to that and realize that every session does count towards something. So like, don't try and rush through it. Just like sit in it, enjoy it for what it is, and know that you'll be better from it.
Yeah, I mean, I always used to break things down into like mathematical equations, right? Like if I've done 2 minutes out of a 20-minute interval, I've done 10%, or break it down and, then you've done 3/4 and 7/8 and that kind of thing.
All the time. It's honestly like I'm working out percentages of how long I've done in the session all the time. If I've got an hour on the bike, for example, at 54 minutes, I'm like, well, you've done 90%, so you've got 10% left to go. and it does help. It helps to just break stuff down, I think.
Yeah, it's just a mental way of like focusing yourself to the next corner, to the next tree, to this, to that, right?
Yeah.
Later on in life, I actually tried the commentary thing, so that I used like a TV commentator. I don't know if you remember Phil Liggett, but like coming out and like commentating on, the attack and just creating this movie in my head. I found that to be quite helpful too.
Oh, so every session almost became a race, and you were sort of mentally talking yourself through.
Yeah, in the hard parts, not every session, but like in the intervals. You're riding intervals maybe 2, maybe 3 times a week, and it's just I found it helpful to always scoop from different buckets of motivation. Mm-hmm. And the same way, I guess, I read somewhere that you struggled with the idea of running without headphones in Kona, running for the marathon, because for one, I think you'd never run one, let alone without headphones. And now you kind of left out there with your own thoughts. Yeah, take us into that.
Sometimes being alone with your own thoughts can be a scary place. And coming from the sort of training I did when I was racing, it was mainly gym-based work, and you'd normally be in a gym and you'd have the music sort of pumping, especially the sort of places that I would train with some of the other drivers, and it would be like that sort of like group environment where it's like, yeah, we're just like really getting into it. And then when I realized obviously you weren't allowed to use headphones for Ironman events, etc., it's something that I tried to implement straight away. I was like, well, what's the point of me listening to music when I'm out running, when I'm cycling, like having all these distractions all the time, if on the race day I'm not going to have that? So I stripped music and that sort of side of things out as soon as possible, just to practice what I was going to do on race day, because one thing I had or didn't have going into Kona was years and years of experience. I had a year to train for Kona. I'd done 3 half Ironmans sort of along my way as like events to help qualify and get to Kona. But it was like, yeah, it was just for me, just making every training session almost count towards my overall experience levels of what that felt like, rather than sort of not doing that and then arriving on race day and it's this even bigger like shift from what I'm used to doing in training.
You go to Kona. You've never been there. You've never done an Ironman. You've done 2 halves, right?
Yeah, I did 3 halves, but 2 70.3 Ironmans.
Okay, yeah. Some racing over half the distance.
Yeah.
And then you're like, cool, I'm going to come here and I'm going to smash the world record. Now your next project, LA 28 Paralympics. You have said you're going out to get a medal, not just any medal, the gold medal. I mean, first of all, I tip my hat. Like, I love that, right? I absolutely love it because you go out with intent. But you've said you have no clue if this is possible. And you come out and make this statement and this commitment publicly. Take us into that thought. Like, why?
I think for me, I would rather be ambitious and go for gold, and then I'm quite happy to fail. I'm quite happy to put myself out there at the highest level possible, and then if I've given my all and it doesn't happen on the day, I take my hat off to the competitors that were able to beat me on the day. Like I say, some things in sport are out of your control, and I can only do the best that I can. But I'm confident that my best is going to be right up there. And if I wasn't confident in that, then I don't really know what I'm doing it for. Like, am I just doing it just to go on the journey? And that would be something, and that's okay if that was what I'm doing it to do. But I'm just not wired like that. I want to be the best version of myself, and I'm hopeful that will mean that I'm the best in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that and that intensity with which you approach things. And yet I must think, like, I think of your mother at times. Of course, I'm a dad of 2, but I think of your mom. And like, honestly, like mentally, your mom must be tough. Like seeing your kid grow up around a racetrack, driving, at 100 miles an hour, and now throwing themselves at the most grueling endurance event, arguably, on the planet. Are you ever afraid of your own intensity? Did you ever think, I need to dial this back a step?
I think, like I said, when I was younger, I was quite a shy kid when I first started racing, and motorsport and competition and finding something that I was really good at and sort of excelled at really built my character and turned me into the person that I am today. Because I never really, before I got into racing and started winning British championships, I never really, when I was playing football at a young age or other sports, I never really had that thing that I felt like I could really excel at, and that just allowed me to grow my confidence. That's what motorsport became for me. It really helped me come out of my comfort zone and grow as a person. And I just think it's nothing to shy away from. Life is a challenge. I think sometimes we look at life as like this thing that we just sort of cruise through. I think life for everyone is a challenge. Okay, everyone's life looks different and there's different challenges, but that's the way I approach everything I do, is that day to day there's challenges that we don't really talk about because we all have to go through them, and it's kind of this sort of unspoken thing. But for me, obviously, my being a double amputee, my challenges are more obvious. I've had to learn to be adaptable and to sort of overcome those challenges and figure out solutions, and become a solution sort of driven person. There's always in my head a solution for something, or at least it's worth giving your all to explore that. And I think just having that mindset now, when I do say I want to do something, it's like, okay, well, how do I be the best version of myself at that? I've been very lucky to see my mum and dad work very, very hard to give me the opportunities that I've had, and I don't want to let them down. I don't want to let 8-year-old me down by going in 20 years time, oh, well, maybe I could have done those extra hours of training and maybe that would have meant that I achieved this thing. I'd rather be like, you did everything you could, and people thought you were a bit mad while you were doing it. But then look at the end result. Look at this amazing thing that you're able to go and achieve, and how awesome it felt to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you are the living example of there are no problems, only opportunities. I mean, you really take that. But I do wonder, when you approach such massive goals, right? They are at the same time very finite achievements. Like, you make it or you don't. And you've gone about making them. And I always found early on that just having this kind of goal really left me quite depleted afterwards, where I had something, I reached that dream, at the same time sort of crushed that dream. And that's why I kind of wonder if breaking the world record for you was a peak or just a false summit. Like, have you found any peace with satisfaction? Or is that something you even seem like a dangerous concept?
Yeah, I think I can relate to you slightly with how you sort of commented on your achievements. And once you achieve those things, you realize that they are moments in time. They're achievements. They're nice to look back on. But I'm the sort of person that likes to have something on the horizon to aim for. I remember crossing the finish line at Kona, sort of being out there for a few days afterwards, coming home and then thinking, like, wow, I did this thing that felt impossible, that people thought I wouldn't be able to do. I've done it, but like, now what's next? And it can be quite tough to be wired like that in a lot of ways, because like you say, you feel like you achieve this thing that you really want to achieve, but then you have that moment of, oh wow, like that feels great for a moment, but it's not enough to sustain, the rest of your life. And so something that I took a bit of a break from triathlon post Kona for a few months, and it was about sort of really reflecting and figuring out, okay, I don't want to just sign up for this next goal and next achievement and then have the same feeling a few years later. So what do I need to work on in the other areas of my life that can really truly leave me satisfied and make sure that I'm complete as a person, whether I achieve that goal, when I achieve that goal, hopefully, that I've still got more to life and stuff to look forward to. And that's where leaning on my family, my friends, and really making sure that outside of the sport, I'm the best friend I can possibly be. I'm the best brother. I'm the best son. And just being that to the people around me is just as important as being the best athlete. And it's hard and it's not easy to get right and not easy to balance. And I'm still learning. But that for me now is the goal. It's not just LA and nothing else matters. It's, I want to be, like I say, best friend, best brother, best son. I want to support the people around me just as much as they support me. And then this goal is there and it's nice. And it feels like everything in those training sessions and on a day-to-day basis, but it isn't everything. And just coming to terms with that.
Yeah, putting things into perspective, right? Because, I mean, it really is that way, right? I mean, you come third in your first race back after your accident, right? Then you win the Kona world record. You have amazing success along the way. Royal congratulations. But like, what about those in-between days? I mean, can I ask you if you're willing to share what was the loneliest moment in your comeback journey?
In my comeback journey, loneliest moment. Good question. I think for me, like, racing is probably, and motorsport is probably slightly different to triathlon in a way that, so after my accident, I had to sort of go through the rehab process, and that was again quite an independent process, quite similar to triathlon. Like, the more work I put in with my rehab, the better I got, the more progress I make. But actually, me going back to racing meant that I had to build a real team around me to make things happen. So that was the mechanics, the engineers, speaking to them about hand controls, then letting them do their bit and design those initial concepts, and then me going back to test them and to see what worked and what didn't. And I think having a team around you and feeling part of something that is actually a little bit bigger than just something for you is really was a really nice introduction back into sort of normality for me in a way, because I'd come from racing, I had this goal, then I had this accident and everything was thrown up into the air. But actually that sort of recovery process and the journey of designing new controls and realizing at times that, okay, this is, as much as this is for me selfishly in this moment, this could actually help other people in the future, like that. And seeing my team sort of thrive and do things they maybe didn't think they would ever do, and designing a car for a guy with no legs, like those were small moments that they weren't just for me, they were for other people. And that was like they're like memories that will stay with me forever.
Yeah, it is remarkable. And please don't get this wrong that I want to compare any kind of injuries that I've had. But when you have setbacks and spend time in a hospital bed or in rehab or all these kinds of things, again, I'm talking about minor niggles here by comparison. But I do always find that it offers a sense of focus, right? Because it's kind of this target. This is a problem you're trying to solve, and you're trying to get as many resources. You basically throwing everything but the kitchen sink and the kitchen sink in the end at it, just to try and solve this thing. So on the contrary, do you remember a moment of pure joy, of like where you've actually thought, geez, I've done it? Like, is there something that stands out?
I think being competitive, there's not too many moments where I'm like completely satisfied, because there's always that one little thing that could be better. But I do think for me, a big moment was that first race back after my accident where I got a podium. And it was more not necessarily a feeling of feeling like I've achieved something that kind of is now I'm set for life and I'm like content. But it was more, I don't think people took me very seriously as a competitor after my accident, because it was more like I had a lot of goodwill and support around me. And then 11 months after my accident, I turn up to a British F3 race for the first race of the season. And like people are kind of like, all like, even like my competitors, they're sort of like, oh, it's like, amazing to see you back, this, that, and the other. But I kind of was looking in their eyes thinking, yeah, you think I'm just here to make up the numbers, and it's like this because I had a lot of,
I'm coming for you.
yeah, I had a lot of media attention and support, and it was like everyone was kind of like looking at me like, oh, let's support Bill, and it's great to see him back. And I'm thinking, thank you very much for that support, but when it comes to on track stuff, I'm the same competitor, if not I'm more fueled for the fire than I was before, because I know that it can be snatched away from you in seconds. And now every single time I go on that track, I'm going to be ruthless, because I know you're not guaranteed anything in life. And my success, my achievements after my accident, that was something that I definitely had. I had definitely more focus and being present and knowing that this could be, every time this could be that last opportunity that I get. So I'm seizing it. And if you're in my way, if you're my competitor, you better watch out.
Oh man, I absolutely love that. I do find that perspective is oftentimes lacking, right? Where athletes, they just sort of go about it and it's like, well, if it's not today, then it'll be fine next time. And that kind of thing where I don't know if you can relate, but success, the outside success that people look upon and applaud for, oftentimes isn't really everything you'd hoped for. It really is that thing, and it's a moment, and it's great, and everybody celebrates. But it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I did this impossible thing. Well, now what? And I find that it really was perspective that also in like my late years of my career really helped fuel me. So it's so refreshing to hear that. But then, speaking of this public success where you stand out here on a podium and the things that you really value highly in life, like how do you balance that gap between public celebration and your private life, like Billy at home on the farm?
Yeah, I think, public success is what it is. Like people, when you when you do well, they want to celebrate you. When you don't do well, you don't hear anything from those said people because there's, something else filling up their attention. And it is a brief snapshot moment in time. And I think I've just learned to I accept that, and I understand it. I understand that people have got their own lives to worry about, and that if you do something amazing, it will get people's attention, but only for a short period of time before their own issues outweigh that, or something that they've got going on, and then you slip back in everyone's mind. And I don't want to be at the forefront of everyone's mind. Like, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice when you do something to have that outside recognition, but I want the recognition of the people that are closest to me. I want them to see the hard work that I put in. I want them to appreciate, the sacrifices that I make, and that I'm there for them as much as they're there for me. And I want to build my circle and bring them up with me. I want my mum, my dad to share that success. Like, one of the things that I'm most excited about with the Paralympics is wearing those GB colours and having my surname, having Monger on the front of my tri-suit. That for me is going to be such a privilege, because my mum and dad have worked so hard to give me every opportunity I've got. And for me to be able to just share a bit of, this is not my name, it's our name on the front of my jersey, like that for me is going to be special.
Yeah, I can really imagine. Would you say that perspective and that view on things has helped you outgrow any fears that you may have had previously? Is there something that you would say through that journey that you've just outgrown a fear? And what was it?
Yeah, I think, again, like I said, I mentioned when I was younger about trying to fit in and stuff like that. Yeah. So I feel like now, having had success and having moments where you feel like you fit in because everyone's sort of, celebrating that success with you, but then realizing that they're not really there for it all. They're there for the highlights. It just makes you realize that, it's not really that important. Like, I want people that are around me for life, and I want to be around people that I want to be around for life, and I want to do the things that I really want to do, and I want to see them succeed and me succeed, and that's it.
Yeah, the independence that comes from it, right? I can so relate, because at school, that was always my topic and that was always my fuel. So I can relate 100%. But it still makes me wonder, you used to race behind a helmet, right? And you sort of had that to shield you off. And now you are literally, I would say, the face of resilience in endurance sports. I mean, it's like anybody complains about anything. Even in my circle, I'm like, yeah, shut up. Look at this guy. He's going out, he's breaking world records, and he's going for the Olympics. Do you ever feel trapped being the face, like being that person, like that image? You're the guy who does hard shit.
Again, I think it's really nice to hear that's how you think of me, but that's how you think of me. And that doesn't mean that I have to look in the mirror and think, yeah, you're the face of resilience. Because I don't.
It would be slightly awkward.
Yeah, I don't do that. I just think of myself as a kid with lofty ambitions, with dreams. I want to make the people around me proud, and if that means that I have to be resilient in the process, that's what I'll do. And again, it's just about disconnecting from adding pressure onto my shoulders of other people's expectations of me. I want to take that pressure's gone now. That pressure's off. The only pressure that's on my shoulders is the pressure that I put on myself, because I really want to do these things and I want to achieve this stuff. But I don't need to add the extra pressure on my shoulders of going, okay, well, Jan's out there telling people I'm the face of resilience in the sport. Like, that's great, but that's not for me to be a part of.
Yeah, again, it speaks to kind of a really stoic approach, right? I mean, if there is a message then that you could send to younger athletes who are out there, what would you want, or what would you like to see people take from your story?
I would like to see people not be afraid to to reinvent themselves and to get out of their comfort zones. Because I think, I'd always, up until my accident and the years after my accident, I was Billy Monger, the racing driver, and I almost was guilty in those moments of thinking that that's who I was, that's what I did, and if I didn't do that, who was I without that? But actually, you realize when you get out of that and you try something completely different, that you can excel at multiple things. I think we all get sometimes caught up in like, oh, this is who we are. Once we've told a few people and we've shown it for a little period of time, it's like, oh, well, you can't go back on that now because you said you were, a racing driver, and now, oh, what are you? By changing up what you do, are you like admitting that you haven't made it as a racing driver? And for me, it's like that's not what this sort of pivot is about. It's about me stumbling across something new, realizing that I really enjoy it, and realizing that I can be really successful and have big ambitions in it. And that sort of knowledge of, I don't want to live with any regret and not know if I could have made it. I don't want to be here in 20 years time going, oh, well, I sort of tried that triathlon thing, but I wasn't too sure about it, or people saw me as a racing driver, so I didn't give it a go. I want people to be like, no, okay, I was a racing driver, I did that stuff, I gave it my all, I really enjoyed it, but then I stumbled across this, and it was that what if, that I didn't just leave it as a what if, I explored it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful thing how you think about 20 years down the line and your 8-year-old self, and it's so clear, and you've said it several times, that you don't dwell on the past, and that's, I think, one of your superpowers possibly. But how do you balance or separate remembering from dwelling?
Oh, you're asking all the good questions here, aren't you? I think it's important for me to remember the joy that I got from racing, and that feeling of winning my first go-kart race, seeing my dad's reaction, spending those years together and creating those memories. Like, I don't want to forget about that just because I do something different now. Like that, those memories, I want to stay with me, and that excitement. And all I'm doing now is just repackaging that and trying to find it through doing something slightly different. But I just want to create more memories with the people closest to me, and just to give my all to this new thing that I'm trying. I think it's really important to remember, but memories are something that, we look back on maybe in tough moments or in moments where we need it, but it shouldn't be a place that I stay permanently. Like I'm growing, I'm learning. Like the way I look at my incident, my accident, and talk about it now is not the way I was able to handle it a few years back. But that's just because I've grown. So I'm planning on keeping growing, trying new things, and seeing where I end up.
Yeah, it's fascinating how athletes, we often think of ourselves as good as the last session, and yet there's so much more. Let's finish this up by going to the present. LA on the horizon, you've got your new goal. You said that the T100 London was your wake-up call that you needed.
Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself? Where did it get you?
I think, like I said, after Kona, I took that break where it was sort of figuring out how I get the other pieces in my life, those other elements, up to the same level that I was able to get that sort of Ironman achievement. Like the Ironman achievement sort of was up here, and then there was a gap to the rest of the bits that go into my life, where I had that sort of fall off moment afterwards of like, oh, like what's next? And I didn't want to get caught up in a what's next situation without sorting those bits out first. So I took that time to really figure out what I wanted the other areas of my life outside of sport to look like. But with taking that time out, you kind of, you've achieved something amazing in a sport, and you think, okay, well, I'm just gonna move on to the next goal. And I think T100 was really good for me because I didn't put pressure on myself, but I didn't put pressure on myself, not because I changed a mindset or anything like that, but because I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be at that given moment in time. And then going through T100 and seeing the results and knowing where my shortfalls were, I wasn't down about it, but it was a wake up call to be like, you need the same level of intensity in the sport side of things, and whilst bringing the other areas of my life up to the place that I want it to be. I can't just drop how intense I am and how dedicated I am with sport to allow these other areas to grow. I need to do both at the same time. I need to lift the other parts of my life up to where I am at with sport, where I bring that intensity and that desire, rather than sort of dropping that down to meet the rest. And that T100 was the highlight of that for me, where it's like, okay, you're leaving stuff on the table when it comes to sport compared to where you've been, and you're going to regret that. So no regrets, intensity back.
All in. I feel like we could have a whole conversation just on balance, but I honestly appreciate you so much, because to me, without trying to put you into any box or anything, you're just someone who personifies that. You know, you never let circumstances write your story. You can always take the pen back. And going mental for me it's not about breaking down. It's about breaking through. And with that, I would like to close us off by a traditional question. In any shape or form, when was the last time that you went mental, and how?
When was the last time that I went mental? I think every 6 weeks at the minute, I'm doing testing for LA, and
Okay.
and like trying to set PBs every 6 weeks. And I remember every time before I do a 5K run test or anything like that, I go mental in my own head about how important it is to PB, and how important it is to smash what my expectations and my trainer's expectations for where I'm at. And yeah, every 6 weeks I have that moment before I do an assessment where it's like, this is the most important assessment of my life. I'm going mental. I'm putting all this pressure on myself. And then I do the thing. And when I'm doing it, I'm not going mental. I'm not thinking about it. I'm actually just trying to enjoy it. But there's definitely probably about a 20-minute window before each one of those assessments where, like, in my own head, I'm going mental about everything that could go wrong, could go right, what I need to think about, technique, all of this kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a stressful 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's 100% I can relate. And I think it's one of those things that'll probably never go away before something that matters.
When you want something, you have to go mental at times to get it. And that's just my little 20-minute window before those tests where I really want this. I really want to improve and do better. And I'm allowed to have that 20 minutes. But then other than that, we just crack on.
Yeah, I love that. I always used to tell myself that's my body telling my brain that it's ready, and it has to be slightly uncomfortable, whichever way it is. Billy, you're a champion. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. Wish you all the best of luck. I'll be following for sure. And yeah, until then, stay healthy, train well, and thanks again for everything.
And stay mental.
Yeah, stay mental. That's right. Awesome, Billy. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day, and appreciate you.